I have compiled the biggest VGC tournament dataset that has ever existed, and today I'm releasing it to all of you and telling you how I used that data to build the team that I used at the North American International Championships. So, a little bit of background. My name is Adi. I am a data analyst by trade, and with the advent of open team sheets, and especially with Arcanine Labs publishing every single team that every single player used in a tournament, I saw this as an opportunity. This is more data than we have ever had for VGC, where in the past we maybe saw the 6 Pokemon that the top 32 players used. This is totally different and totally game-changing. And as far as I know, no one was really using this data in any meaningful way. And so what I did was I went ahead and I gathered every single team that every single player used at every single tournament that was hosted on Arcanine Labs, which includes every single international championship, every single regional, and a decent number of the special events held in Europe as well. And so I've gathered not only every single team that every player used in those tournaments, but also every single pairing that happened in those tournaments. And so as a result, what I have and what you're looking at is over 20,000 rows of matchups of player versus player, and also the 6 Pokemon that each of those players used. What does that mean? That means a lot of different things, and that is a ton of data that you can use to try to solve a format. And that's exactly what I did. But first, some of the more fun things that I did. I gathered this data and I told my friends about it, and the first thing that they asked me to do was to create ELO ratings. Who is the best player based on the data? And so what you're seeing in front of you is the ELO ratings for every single player who played VGC this year. It is not technically ELO, it is technically Glyco 2, which is what Pokemon Showdown uses to formulate their ladder ratings. And that's just, I think, a little better, also a little easier to implement, but it does come with a couple caveats that I should mention right off the bat. The first is that playing a lot of games really helps you. If you have played very few games, your rating is just not going to be high enough to really be in this top few players, even if you had a very good win rate in those games. That's also true on something like the Pokemon Showdown ladder. And then similarly, the games that are played more recently are going to count more, essentially. The reason for that is just ladder inflation, and you see it in the global challenges. The players who play all their games on Sunday have a higher rating because of the natural rating inflation of ladders. And as a result, when you look at these ratings, you're going to see, generally by and large, you're going to see the best players at the top, but you're also going to see some players who have a relatively low win rate but had a very successful back half of the season at the very top of these standings or towards the top of these standings. And on the other hand, there are some players who had really, really strong seasons, like Agati comes to mind, where he got second at the European Championships, but is not in the top 25 just because the last couple tournaments he played in, he did not do as well, and those really count much more because of that natural ladder inflation. And so take it with a grain of salt, but of course you also have wins and losses and win rate in this, and so you can see some really cool things with this. I actually have a plot of every single player who's played at least 17 games, which excludes Abdullah and includes Maluka, who won the one regional that they both attended. Sorry guys, but you need to have a little bit bigger sample size. But you can see the win rate of every single player who's presumably been to at least 2 tournaments, right? You play 9 rounds in a tournament in day 1, so if you get knocked out, at least 2 tournaments. Every single player who's done that, their number of games played and their overall win rate, which I think is really cool. And you can see, Joe UX9 at the very, very end of this with 165 games played, almost 20 more than anyone else because he's attended basically every single tournament this year and done well at every single tournament this year, making day 2, making top cut, playing those additional games. So that is one thing that you can do with this data. I gave this to my friend Gavin Michaels, who is top 8 in North America going into the North American Championships. And on Tub Takes, he showed off what you can do with this, which is he actually simulated the North American Championships over 2,500 times in order to figure out who is most likely to win, yes, but also what the bar is likely to be for that top 8 in North America, which will allow the top 8 in North America get a free trip to Japan and also get a automatic invite to day 2 of the World Championships. And him being in the day 2 race wanted to know exactly how well he had to do or how poorly he had to do at the North American Championships to guarantee himself a spot in day 2. And so you can see some cool plots that he had. First and foremost, you can see this this box and whisker chart that shows what the average, the 75th, 25th percentile range is for the 8th spot and 9th spot in North America. And you can see that actually the bar was 11-10 that Raghav snuck in on. That is actually towards the lower range. And so a lot of times a second place finish from Raghav, if maybe Nick or if maybe Colin or even like Wolf had done a little better at the tournament, might not have actually gotten that day 2 slot. And on the other hand, you also can see the probability that each player going into the tournaments would get a day 2 invite. And again, you do see the top 7 all made it. And then Raghav with that 0.08% chance, but he did not only do very, very well at the tournament, but also some of the players above him did relatively poorly, also managed to qualify, and also the odds of every single player winning. So a lot of really cool analysis that you can do with this ELO ratings. This is actually something that is quite easy to keep updated, and so maybe I will keep ELO ratings updated for the upcoming season as well. If that's something that people are interested in, let me know in the comments down below. But unlike Gavin, I was not concerned with calculating how badly I had to do at the North American Championships. I was trying to win the event, and I had nothing on the line. I already had my day 1 invite. I did not have a chance at day 2, even if I won the tournament. And so what I was interested in is, can I use data to break this format? And first and foremost, I thought that the team to beat was New Balance. New Balance meaning the team that Brian Yum used to win Milwaukee. We saw it have multiple spots in top cuts of Milwaukee, of Hartford, of Turin Regional, some of the biggest events leading up to the North American Championships. And that, I think, was the team to beat going into the tournament, at least in my opinion. And so I looked at the data and I looked at every single matchup that team had played and what individual Pokemon had a positive win rate against that team, as well as what cores of Pokemon had a positive win rate against that team. And let me tell you, it was bleak. There were not a ton of I think there were 2 Pokemon that had a over 50% win rate against that core of 6 Pokemon. And I think they were like Mimikyu and Scizor. I did this analysis before Fresno Regionals, which was the last regional of the year. And so it doesn't include the results there, where I think New Balance didn't do nearly as well, although Riley did manage to get top 4 at that tournament with it. And so maybe if I had done it a little later, I would have seen more trends. But at the time, there were very few Pokemon that were doing well into that New Balance core. However, there was one team that was doing exceptionally well. And that was, if I looked for 2 Pokemon cores that were beating New Balance consistently, the top of the list was Annihilape Chenpao. It was a 2 Pokemon combination that had a very, very good win rate against New Balance. And here on screen, I've pulled up every single instance of player using Annihilape and Chenpao on their team playing against the New Balance 6. And so that 20,000 row data set has now, we're only looking at 28 games essentially. And overall, I think they won 17 of them, like over a 60% win rate against the top team in the format. And if you take out the American players who are using it, which is a relative minority, right? You see most of these results are from Malmo, from Turin, and then a few people at Milwaukee and Hartford. But if you look at just the results from Malmo and Turin, it has an even higher win rate. And I realize that this is not, I mean, if you know the format, you know that Annihilape Chenpao was not a common sight, especially in North America. That's not a really common team. But it looks like there was one team building group in Italy that was really using this core and finding a lot of success with it. I believe that Francesco Iozia, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, top cut Malmo with it, and then got top 32 at Turin with it. And then Marco Marziali also got top 16 at Turin with it. And you can look at the list of players they beat. I mean, they beat some really, really good players using that New Balance team. So I thought there was something there. I thought, I got to look into what are they doing right. And it turns out that they both use the same 6 Pokemon, slightly different sets. In particular, Marco had a Citrus Taunt Annihilape, whereas Francesco had a Assault Vest Annihilape. And I thought that was really interesting. They were not running the traditional Annihilape team that either A, you were trying to use Mousehold to beat it up, like Zach had a lot of success with this season, or B, something like Navjit used at Vancouver, where you could, I think it was Vancouver, where you could use Screamtail to support your Annihilape, really disrupt them and get bulk ups off with screens or something like that, to very consistently to very consistently set up your Annihilate, even if you're not threatening that beat up potential. And this is nothing like that. Instead, what this team does is it's using Annihilate as a damage trader. It's just saying this is a good Pokemon. It's one of the two really common defined Pokemon in the format, the other one being King Gambit. But New Balance has a Tinglu, and so it's actually, and also a Chiyu, and so it's pretty well insulated against King Gambit. But Annihilate is really difficult for that team to beat. And while it can beat the Mouseholds and it can beat the Screamtails, the Annihilate itself can be really difficult, especially with a little bit of special bulk. And so this is what I was looking at, and I was trying to figure out what made these teams so good into New Balance. I kind of like theoried it out, but I also reached out to Marco at this point and said, hey, can you tell me about your team? What do you do into New Balance? Why were you so successful? And he actually gave me a really, really detailed response, and I was talking to him quite a bit in the before Fresno regionals, trying to figure out, how does this team work? And basically he said, the Chen Pao doesn't really come to the matchup. You don't need the Chen Pao against New Balance. So the fact that it was Chen Pao Annihilate showing up in the data was really interesting, because it was just because that meant that they were using Annihilate in a certain way, not that the Chen Pao was actually contributing to the matchup. And he said, the thing that actually makes that matchup is the Annihilate along with the Clear Smog Amoonguss. That really makes it really difficult, because they can't set up on you, and you can just trade damage really effectively. You can howl in them with Arcanine, stuff like that. And so I took this to heart, and I didn't have the guts to switch up my team like 2 days before Fresno regionals, which is when I ran this analysis and when I started talking to Marco. And so I didn't want to give up on my prep for that regional, and I went 6-3, and I honestly kind of regret it. I maybe should have gotten a test run with this team first, but I decided to build around that for NAIC. I told everyone who would listen that this was the call for NAIC. Chuppa, who got top 8, actually tested out the AV Annihilate on his team, decided it wasn't the right spot, but Justin Burns was the person who believed in me, believed in my vision, and he and I built this team that we used for the North American Championships. Now, you might notice there is no Chen Pao. We actually had a Chen Pao on the team until the last couple of days, where we replaced it with a Tinglu that was very targeted. It was very built towards beating a certain couple matchups that we needed help with. But overall, we kept the same Iron Bundle, Arcanine, Amoonguss, and then a Saltfest Annihilate core. And we said this is going to beat all of the balanced matchups. It's so good. But instead of running Chen Pao Dragonite to kind of fix up those last two slots, we're using Fluttermane Tinglu. Part of the reason for that was because when I was talking to Marco, he mentioned that the team was very weak to Goldengo. It was very weak to Glimmora, a lot of the things that traditionally do well into Powknight. And we wanted to have a little bit more of a robust spread into the different variants of Hyper Offense. And honestly, this team was sick. I love this team. I thought it was so good. My prep felt really good. And honestly, I thought that the reason I didn't do especially well, I went 6-3 or 5-3 at the tournament. I think I would have won my last round had I chosen to not drop. But I lost to some very good players. But honestly, I thought I played very poorly in this tournament. Every single one of my losses, I can't attribute to the team or matchup. And instead, I was in a winning position in a lot of those games. And just made minor misplays, and balance just really punishes you for making slightly inaccurate plays. Even if they seem innocuous, you will get punished especially if you consistently make them. And so, like, for example, clicking Drain Punch instead of Rage Fist to take a KO, and then finding out that no, they have a Fluttermane in back. That was one of the ways that I lost to Thomas to Hari, who made day 2, stuff like that. And so that was on me. I played really poorly, but the team felt like it was the call. Looking at the tournament, I felt like I had pretty good matchups into basically everything that did well, with the exception of the team that won, Alex Gomez's team. I thought that I really thought this was the meta call, and I really felt confident in the team, felt confident in my prep, and I just played poorly. But overall, this team was sick. It was super cool. I also did not face much balance. I faced essentially one New Balance team round 1, and I beat them. I played one of Emilio's team, which is also a more balanced team, and I beat them. And I played one of the South American Magnezone Balance team, and that Renzo Navarro popularized. And I talked to the guy afterwards, and he was like, I was like, are you using the same team as Renzo? And he's like, I built Renzo's team. This is my team. And he was like, oh shit. But that team also had no AV Annihilate matchup. It was a more balanced team, and it really struggled against this AV Annihilate. So I really felt like we had the call for this tournament, and Justin faced a couple bad matchups early on. Funnily enough, Palance, which has fallen out of popularity, is a relatively bad matchup. The Annihilate being Terra-Fire really punishes the fact that the two main water types in the format were the three main water types in the format were Azumarill, I guess, with Gavin's team from Fresno, the Gyarados that was on New Balance, and the Iron Bundles that were on a lot of other offensive teams. And those were really the only three water types we were really concerned about. And Gyarados does not want to switch into Annihilate, obviously. Azu, we hard teched for with the Terra Grass Tinglu, and I think that that really stomps all the rain teams that we prepped against. And then, of course, there was the bundles, which just kind of they don't do enough to AV Annihilate, and they go down to a Drain Punch. And so I felt like we were really well positioned into all the water types except for Palafin that had dropped off in popularity. And Justin faced that round 1, and he lost to that. And that's just how it goes sometimes when you're playing in these tournaments. And then similarly, the Sun matchup was also really bad, and that had also fallen off the map. And I did manage to beat the one Sun player I played. Tinglu was really important in that for obvious reasons. But I think that if I had played against like Joe, who got top 4 with Sun, that would have been a really bad matchup for us. But overall, I think the matchup spread was really, really good. And it was really just on my play that I didn't do as well as I wanted to at this tournament. But this is how I used data to identify what I thought was a hole in the metagame. A team that was really popular in Europe, but that the North American players hadn't really seen before, and that I thought matched up really well into a lot of the teams that were going to be very common at the North American Championships. In the end, one of the takeaways for me is that, one, data cannot predict what is going to be common in the future. It can tell you what is going to be good against the teams that already exist and already have seen a lot of play, but by and large, by the time teams have seen that much play, they are going to start getting rotating out of the format because people are going to start counter teaming them. And we saw that really, really well. We saw that with Raghev's team that had a fantastic New Balance matchup. We saw that with Alex's team that won NAIC that had a fantastic New Balance matchup. It really was impressive to see. I can't predict the other innovations that are going to happen into the metagame, and that is one thing that data is just unable to really effectively do. And you just have to hope that your team does well into those opposing teams. On the other hand, for example, this team does really, really well into the team that Wolf and Carson used to get top 16 at the North American Championships, right? So that's hard to say, but it is overall, I'm really happy with the team. I'm really happy with the fact that this is a proof of concept that you can use this amount of data in a constructive way and really use it to improve my own performance, even though I didn't actually do that well. And so, again, like I mentioned earlier, all the data in this video that I used is in the description down below. It's in a Google Drive. The ELO ratings, as well as every single matchup, every single team sheet, every single pairing is in the folder. So definitely, I really, really love it if people check that out, if people use it for their own personal projects. I want to see what people can do with this crazy amount of data that we have in VGC now. And I want to see what we can do with that. And so while I didn't make it public before Internats when we were actually playing Regulation C because I wanted to use it for my own competitive advantage, I am very interested in seeing how other people can use this data. Obviously, it is most useful when formats are sustained for a long period of time, and with the upcoming DLC, it is very likely that we're not going to be able to do something like this for the foreseeable future. But if it is possible, I definitely want to try to do something like this, and I want everyone else to have that ability as well. And so if you are a data nerd like me and you want to play around with this, by all means, do so. I'd love it if you told me about the results of this sort of analysis. I'm very curious about what other people can do. I'm very curious about what you can find in this data. And if you do end up using this for a big project, I would love to hear about it. And honestly, I'd love it if you referred them back to where you got the data from, so that I can continue to do this and do this in a way that really gives back to the community. So yeah, that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed this and think it's cool because I'm a huge data nerd. I don't know how everyone else looks at this stuff, but I love looking at this stuff, and so I hope that y'all enjoyed this as well. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, I'll see you all later.